Session will be about Happy Birds, or Angry Birds, rather. And the speaker is Mr. Adam Najberg. He's the digital editor Asia of the Wall Street Journal. He has over 2 decades of experience as a journalist in the US, Europe, and Asia. He began his career in 1989 based in Beijing as a freelancer for the Washington Post during the student protests. That must have been pretty crazy. He's also written a few books. In 2005, he wrote a book called Stuple's Office Tools for the Hopeless Fools. Last year, he wrote a book or novel called Chongqing Burning. He makes frequent public appearances on behalf of Dow Jones, speaking on markets, social media, and digital branding. Here he is, Mr. Adam Najberg. Whichever chair you'd like.
We on? Yes, we are. Well, bright lights, so I cannot see anybody, but let me take a couple of seconds to introduce a man I just met a little while ago, but I feel like I've known him for years. I'm talking about Peter Vesterbacka from, not Candy Crush, but from Rovio. Peter's a very interesting guy. When you talk to him, you have absolutely no idea that he's a chief marketing officer. You have absolutely no idea that he works for a gaming company. He is visionary. He likes to talk about education. He likes to talk about all the things that really have very little to do with games. I'm going to bring him out here, and we're going to talk for a brief period, and then we're going to open it up because I'm sure that everyone in the audience will have questions. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the man I'm going to be interviewing, Mr. Peter Vesterbacka. Peter, thanks a lot for consenting to sit here and be interviewed by a journalist.
Sure.
I've never guessed what company you work for based on what you're wearing.
Yeah, I mean, it might come as a surprise to many people, but something to do with Angry Birds.
And I also saw that you grabbed the Mighty Eagle moniker for yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always believe that kind of like your business card should create kind of like a reaction and ideally like a dialogue. And when I hand out the business card where it says the Mighty Eagle, I always get kind of like question that what exactly is it that you do, and then like kind of like take it from there. So it works.
So I had a hard time convincing my boss that I was actually coming here to work. He asked me, "Oh, so who are you going to be interviewing?" I said, "Guy from Rovio, Angry Birds." So I should also thank you because you probably killed my productivity more than anyone else in the last few years.
Yeah, but that's actually, a lot of people think that games actually reduce the productivity, but I mean, there are many studies that prove the exact opposite. And I mean, if you take breaks, and I mean really breaks from kind of like what you're working on, and you take your mind off, whatever it is, and Angry Birds and our games are a great way to do that. It actually increases your productivity. So, and it's perfectly okay for, like anybody there in the audience. I can't really like see you, but it's actually okay to play Angry Birds right now. I don't mind at all. But it is, proven that games actually improve your productivity and not the other way around. So I think that we actually increase the productivity of the planet with the 2 billion Angry Birds downloads.
Nice try, but I don't think my boss is going to go for that one. But you do bring up an interesting point about your company, productivity aside. This is a game that comes from a small Finnish company. Yet wherever you go, people think it comes from their country. Humble beginnings, and now your company had 27 million euros in profit last year, 156 million euros in revenue. And on top of all that, you're not just a game, you're a global brand. Talk about how you transcended just being another app.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of like been very typical for how we kind of like been doing things at Rovio, that we really haven't seen ourselves kind of like as being a games company kind of like for a very long time. And also kind of like the original kind of like Angry Birds strategy was kind of like the Tetris strategy, if you will. So so we released the game in December 2009, and then already in the spring 2010 started talking about that actually we're going to go for 100 million downloads. And that was when we maybe had, I don't know, 2-3 million or something like that. So everybody thought that we're crazy. Of course, we're told that, hey, like Tetris is the only game out there that has gotten to 100 million, and it took them like 20 years. So, you guys are crazy. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get to 100 million with Angry Birds like ever. And then actually what happened was that in the first year of Angry Birds, we got 50 million downloads, which was, of course, huge. Then Christmas happened, so 2000 Christmas we added 25 million, so we ended up with like 75 million entering the new year. And then in March 2011 we hit 100 million, which again I thought was like super ambitious, and again, as I said, everybody in the company and outside thought that I was crazy, that okay, 100 million can't be done. But what was very interesting with that is the, kind of like then the psychology that after that everybody in the company kind of like just believes that like of course we can do anything. I mean, we got to the 100 million, and now when we do a new project, the kind of like the 100 million goal is just there as kind of like a small note, like on a slide that okay, target 100 million downloads. And of course, if you look at Angry Birds now, we have over 2 billion downloads. So Angry Birds is the most distributed piece of entertainment content like ever. So it's bigger than anything in games, in music, in videos, and I always say that's like it's a good start. But that also means that the brand is very well known. So we have 9 out of 10 Americans know the brand, 93% of the Chinese population know the brand, and that's like pretty amazing considering that we are a brand that kind of like started all digital.
But how? This is my question. If I flashed on the screen for these people here, Coca-Cola, everyone would recognize the logo. McDonald's, they recognize the logo. But those are well-established, long-standing brands. You're basically just an upstart.
Absolutely, and I think that that's what makes it very interesting, because if you look at kind of like the speed of kind of like the growth and how kind of like we built massive brand awareness in just a couple of years, it's something that hasn't really been done before at this scale. So I think we're the fastest growing kind of like consumer brand ever, and it's we kind of like then took that and we used the game to build a brand. So again, getting a few billion copies out there helps, and then we leveraged the brand to go into consumer products. And again, when we went into the toy business, we were told that hey, you guys are a games company. What do you know about toys? And yeah, I mean, what do we know about toys? Maybe not that much, but there are many companies that know like pretty much everything about toys. So we teamed up with Commonwealth Toy in New York. They've been making toys for like 150 years, and then we got into the kind of like toy business, starting with plush toys, and then like if you fast forward to now, we have I think something like 500-600 partners. We have tens of thousands of Angry Birds branded products. We are the 7th or 9th, depending on who you ask, largest licensed brand on the planet. So I mean, we're still like far from Disney, that is kind of like a distant number one, but we've had a good kind of like trajectory, and we're kind of like working on that. But again, we took kind of like the brand, and then we weren't afraid of leveraging brand, going into new areas. We bought an animation studio. Now we have the biggest animation studio in Northern Europe, which, okay, doesn't take that much, but still sounds good. And we launched actually our first animated series March last year, and we didn't just like throw it out there and put it on like TV and what have you, but we actually built our own like TV channel, so Toons TV. So we added a button to all of our games. And overnight, I think at the time we had 1.3 billion copies of our game out there. So we updated kind of like all of them overnight, and we created the biggest, or one of the biggest video distribution networks on the planet. And first year, 2 billion views for our animated series. So it's just, again, doing things differently is kind of like what Rovio has been all about.
So following up on that, building a brand for brand's sake just makes you money. And the thing that really surprised me, I've talked to a lot of game company executives, and most of them wear ties, by the way. But,
yeah, I mean, it happens, but I mean, you can't like lose all credibility if you do that.
Well, I mean, I'd like to have your iPad because you have all the games installed on there.
Yeah.
But building a brand for brand's sake, so you build up this massive Death Star of money. So what? I was really surprised to hear some of the things you were saying, and I wonder if you'd share some of that stuff. I had no idea Rovio is in some of the places, countries, in some of the non-traditional gaming areas that you guys are in. What's the vision here?
Yeah, I think that we're really kind of like the way we look at ourselves. So as I said, we haven't kind of like looked at ourselves as a games company. I mean that's kind of like, okay, of course we started with games, and I mean we made 51 games before Angry Birds, so it wasn't kind of like an overnight success story. It took 51 games, 6 years, and then kind of like 52nd game was Angry Birds. But already with Angry Birds, so kind of like the vision there was really to kind of like make games for the iPhone until we have a hit, and then kind of like knowing how difficult it is that when we have a hit, go all in, take it to all the platforms and all screens, but also not limit it there, like take it to kind of like all areas, and of course was impossible to kind of like predict the level of success. I mean, if you would ask me that, okay, how many downloads do you think that you'll have, like in 4 years, I don't think that I ever would have guessed like 2 billion. I mean, that's like just a crazy number. But then once we kind of like got going, we pushed into new areas. We went into all areas of entertainment, of course, games, animation, consumer products, building parks, soft drinks, you name it. So we really kind of like haven't been afraid of going into a lot of areas, and we're looking at, okay, providing Angry Birds branded experiences for our fans. And actually our business is super simple if you look at it, that we only care about two things, our fans and our brand, and if we kind of like keep that in mind, we'll kind of like do okay. But then we didn't kind of like stop there. So we looked at entertainment, we went to kind of like a lot of areas. But then one thing that we did early on, we actually hired some people from kind of like the book publishing industry. It's actually a funny story how that happened. That me and Mikael, our CEO, we had a meeting with these two guys from a book publisher, and then we're discussing that some of the like first Angry Birds books. So we then had this discussion, and then kind of like we were listening to their like pitch that, okay, that they'll give us like, I don't know, 10% or like less of kind of like revenue. And we're like, okay, and what exactly are you doing for us, for that? And then we said, okay, time out. Took a break in the middle of the meeting, and then we just like we had discussions that, okay, actually, let's hire these guys and let's do it ourselves. So then that was kind of like the start of Rovio Books. So we just kind of like made a decision right there, and then it took like a week to get the guys on board, and then we started publishing. But they had a background in educational publishing as well, and then very early on, we kind of like realized that, hey, people really, of course, they kind of like love the game, they play a game a lot, but they really engage with the characters. And when you have engagement, then you can also have learning. So we kind of like started looking at learning, at education, and that was like 3 years ago. And we actually then, okay, being Finland, we have some pretty amazing schools there, so the educational system kind of like works. So we actually took the Finnish curriculum for like early years education. We went to the kind of like the Finnish National Board of Education. We talked to those guys, and then we kind of like built a full curriculum, music, math to coding, and we actually made it fun. So we kind of like created our own fun learning method, and then we teamed up with some universities to kind of like actually do the academic research to prove that our like fun learning method delivers, and it delivers better results than anything else. We tested it actually here in Singapore and in Finland on a couple of hundred kids. Took 3 years, then we built everything, games, books, learning environments, teacher training. I mean, our teacher training manual is like 850 pages. And then we took our time, 3 years. We started rolling out the program end of last year, so we trained the first teachers in China on fun learning. There are 90 million teachers in China, so it's going to take us a few years to train all of them, but we will. Then we actually then set again like some pretty ambitious goals. So we had like 100 million downloads as goal, with Angry Birds, and that was kind of like way too modest. So what we're now trying to do, actually not only trying, we'll transform education globally, and we'll make learning fun. So that's kind of like what we're up to in education.
Peter, one last question, two-part one before we turn it over to the people in the audience. There's a lot of protectionism in a lot of countries, yet you're accepted there. My son was in Brazil last summer, saw people playing Angry Birds. They play Angry Birds in China, a market that's not really known to be open and friendly. So my question there is, why are you not being protected out of these markets? And the second question is, the other side of it. Why are you so universally accepted? Game players in countries are very different. Some things that succeed in Japan don't succeed in China. Yet Angry Birds is played in many, many countries. Why is that?
Yeah, I think that if I answer kind of like the second question first, I think that we kind of like ended up there, maybe not so much because of kind of like global intent or anything like that, but actually it was very early and kind of like very core to our like design philosophy at Rovio that we decided to eliminate all text. So make the game all visual. And if you go back to 2009, there weren't that many games that were kind of like built for touch devices and kind of like the user interfaces and all of that. They weren't what they are today. I mean, now a lot of people do the same kind of like menus and things that we do, so there's like no text. And that means that kind of like a 2-year-old or a grandparent can pick up our game and play it immediately. So it's super approachable and very intuitive. And I think that that's kind of like the starting point. So then, it's just as easy to play the game in China or in Brazil. So there's, again, no kind of like barrier, no language barrier, and again, being all visual, it's super easy to play it anywhere. Then we kind of like taking that a bit further. So we always want to be more local than the locals. So more Chinese than the Chinese, more American than apple pie, and so on. So and I don't know what would be like a good like saying here in Singapore, more Singaporean than Singapore sling, but that's like a cliche, I guess. I need to come up with something better. But anyway, so I think that then we actually we took local seasons and customs and festivals, and we took that to our game. So for example, Angry Birds Seasons, I think it was already 3 years ago, we did a big update on around the Moon Festival in China. And actually, because of that, hundreds of millions of people outside of China, first time that they heard about the Moon Festival was through our game. So, the cultural ministry in China loves us because we're actually one of the biggest exporters of Chinese culture through our games. And what I always say in China, that we're kind of like not only taking Angry Birds to China, but we're bringing China to the world. And of course, they have a bit of an interest in that. So I think that. And at the same time, it was a great experience for our fans all over the planet because, again, you kind of like learn about local customs and local festivals. So it's kind of like a win-win, kind of like for kind of like everybody involved. And we're doing more and more of that. I mean, same thing, Angry Birds Star Wars. I had actually a very fun meeting in the middle of kind of nowhere. So went to see the Walmart guys, and that was actually the day after we launched Angry Birds Star Wars, and I was kind of like sharing the story about the Moon Festival and all of that, and then I said that okay, then I asked the guys that okay, and this like in the middle of America and all that, and you asked the guys that okay, have you guys heard about Star Wars? And they like looked at me and like, what do you mean Star Wars? Of course, like everybody knows Star Wars. Like are you crazy? And yeah, I guess I'm. But anyway, so then then I said that yeah, but hey, guess what? China, not everybody knows about Star Wars. Okay, if you go to China now, maybe not everybody knows Star Wars, but they all know Angry Birds Star Wars. So we also kind of like taking American culture to kind of like new places. It's not like a given that Star Wars is known everywhere. And I mean, you just need to go to not that far from the US. You go to Mexico, and Star Wars is not like a huge brand. But if you go to the stores in Mexico, you'll find like tons of Angry Birds Star Wars merchandise like all over the place. So it's again, I think that it's very interesting that what you can do with a brand, and also it is very much kind of like a global market, but you have to take into account local. And that's also, of course, you have this like, think global, act local, and like all of these like sayings over the years. But I think that we've really tried to do our best to kind of like do that for real.
And of course, you have to have a playable game that people want to download to start, right?
It kind of helps that. I mean, like I think that's what I always tell people that again. If you don't have like a great game, if you don't provide a great experience, no matter what you do, like in your marketing and branding and all of that, it's not going to go anywhere. So of course, today you have to get many things right, including the gameplay and like the experience. So it has to be like top notch.
Peter, if you're okay with that, I'd like to open it up to the audience if they have questions, observations. or if they're looking for any game tips from you. Are you a good player?
Yeah, I mean, of course, part of the job, I play all our games, and I play a lot of other games as well. So, I mean, I think that no matter what business you're in, if you're not kind of like eating your own dog food, and if you're not like passionate about what you do, then I don't think that you can be like really successful. So, of course, kind of like love what I do, and I of course play all our games like as much as I can. So absolutely.
Mighty Eagle. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my eyes are starting to adjust a little bit to the bright lights here. So if you wave like a mighty eagle, I'll point to you, or just wait for a microphone to come around, please. Are there any questions for Peter? I see a hand in the back there.
Hi. Hello. I wanted to ask you about the animation, because I write scripts and content for animation for TV, and I'm just wondering how easy it is when you bypass normal broadcasters, because you have a brand like Angry Birds, and just dive into your own animation series. Do you bring in script writers? Do you bring in animation producers? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we have our own animation studio, and we have all of those guys that you mentioned. So of course we have our own script writers, and we have animators, and we have producers, and so on and so on. So we have all of that. But it's not only kind of like in animation. I mean, we have actually people that have been working on the backstory of Angry Birds. You know, like the Piggy Island, the environment where everything takes place. I mean, we actually even built like a miniature of the Piggy Island at the office, where you have it's actually like extreme detail, so you can find all the kind of like backgrounds, all the locations that you see in our games, you can find for real on that island. So it's all like very, very carefully kind of like planned and orchestrated, and we actually have shared very, very little on the backstory. I mean, we share a little bit more through our animated series, we share a little bit through our books, our comic books. We'll share a big chunk more in 2016, so 4th of July weekend, the first full feature-length movie comes out. So again, we have years and years of backstory, kind of like more depth and detail on like every bird, every pig. So there's a lot more kind of like to Angry Birds than meets the eye. So we haven't kind of like shared a whole lot of kind of like the Angry Birds world, the Angry Birds universe. But we're doing more and more of that kind of like through our games, through our animations. Then, you know, like a question about like how easy it is. I think, you know, to bypass the normal broadcasters, we work with about 30 broadcast partners, because again, that like increases the reach, because there's still people watching traditional TV as well. But of course, it's very, very much easier for us when we own all the content, and we just kind of like stick it out there on our Toons TV channel, and it's live instantly in China, in the US, in Brazil, here in Singapore, like everywhere. And I think that that's again very different from what some of the other people have to do when they have to negotiate like for, you know, sometimes years to get their animations on like a particular broadcaster, say in France or Germany or whatever. We just like take a couple of minutes and we're live globally, and we have a bigger audience than most broadcasters, with maybe the exception of CCTV that they have like 6 million or something. So yeah, it's much easier when you control everything yourself.
Thank you. Other questions for Peter? I see in the middle here. If we can get a microphone there. All right.
My question was, before the downloads started coming in, did you have any idea that Angry Birds was going to be like the massive phenomenon that it is today?
I would say that we had like pretty good indication that that it would be a good game, and also kind of like have some success. And actually the first indication was when the developers, I mean, we're only 12 people at the company at the time, the developers were playing the game a lot, so that's actually one of the reasons why it took a bit longer to get Angry Birds completed, because again, it was played a lot during development. And I think that was also good because it made the game better. I think that the first really kind of like big indication that we were onto something was when Niklas, one of our founders, so he went home, to see his parents over Christmas, and then kind of like, you know how it is when you kind of like made something new and then you kind of like want to show your parents. So he, gave his phone to his mom, and his mom is kind of like I don't know, your typical mom. She doesn't really play any games, and typically what happened when he like showed one of our games, the previous 51 games, that okay, you give the phone to the mom, she looks at it, oh yeah, really nice, and you get the phone back. With Angry Birds, Niklas didn't get his phone back all Christmas because his mom was playing the game. So that was kind of like very, very strong indication that yeah, we're probably onto something. And then, what happened was that we became #1 in Finland, so, country of Nokia, so it was like not too many iPhones in 2009, so we did word of mouth marketing. We told friends and family that wanted to download Angry Birds, #1. So that was kind of like how we got going, and then we became #1 in Sweden, then Apple picked up, there was something going on, they featured us in the UK, we went to #1, stayed there, same thing in the US, and Angry Birds stayed actually #1 for more than 300 days, so longer than pretty much any other game has ever stayed there. So it was, that's kind of like how it started.
Thank you. I think we can squeeze in another question. In the front here?
It occurs to me that when people are creating games, it's a similar process to creating programming, and they're looking at a target demographic, a target audience. I mean, if you've got 2 billion people, you're not really segmenting your market. Your target is everybody. I mean, did you create this with a specific demographic in mind? Surely with your other games you must have gone through that process as well.
Yeah, but actually with Angry Birds, what we wanted to create something that, again, like, okay, removing all text, making it very approachable, that we didn't think target demographic or anything like that. We actually, what we always do, we want to create games that we love playing ourselves. That's like, we don't do like target groups and like any of that. I mean, it's okay, I don't know, it's not like complete waste of time maybe, but again, it's not something that we do. So we just kind of like make games that we kind of like love playing ourselves. And then with Angry Birds, we really created what kind of like Hollywood guys would call a 4-quadrant title. So it really is for like everybody. It's for boys and girls, men and women, all ages, everywhere. So that's just like every day, or let's say, I'm not surprised anymore, but like it's really amazing, the people who play Angry Birds and come up and say, okay, I have 3 stars on every level, and it's like not the people that you would expect. I mean, it's grandparents, really young kids, older kids. It's like, it's really is everybody, and I think that's kind of like, again, with 2 billion downloads, it has to be that way, that it really kind of like has to appeal to everybody. Okay, that said, now if you look at what we're doing, we are starting to kind of like offer or kind of like go maybe deeper into certain demographics. So example of that is Angry Birds Stella that we're launching later in the year. That's more, let's say, it's still a game and kind of like a franchise for everybody, but it's more targeted towards female demographic, and that's something that you can expect us to do more. I mean, Angry Birds Epic, which is now in soft launch in a couple of countries, should come out globally in the not too distant future. That's, again, let's say, a bit more hardcore. I mean, it's still super casual, but it's more hardcore than like some of the other Angry Birds games. So again, that's different demographic. Or Angry Birds Go, I mean, it's a carding game, downhill racing. Of course, it appeals a bit more to a male demographic than some of the other games. So we are starting to do more kind of like specific and kind of like more kind of like maybe going deeper into certain demographics, but still the overall philosophy is really to kind of like try to create experiences that are for kind of like all ages and really kind of like appeal to kind of like a global audience, if there is such a thing. But again, as I said before, always try to be like global, but also super local.
Thank you. So, Peter, let me close this up. It's been informative. It's been interesting. I keep waiting for Angry Birds to crest, for Rovio to crest. Like a lot of games I've played, a lot of games I've reviewed, it hasn't happened yet. You're branching off into classrooms. You're in national educational curricula now. I look forward to seeing what comes next. And thank you for making time and speaking with us.
Yeah, thank you. And as I always say, I mean, the way we look at this is that we're only getting started. So I mean, like again, we have much kind of like bigger ambition, and that's also what kind of like keeps the team going. So you know, always say that it's a good start, but we have a bit of a bigger plan here, and we're not building Angry Birds for, you know, like 100 days like a lot of games, but we're building Angry Birds for like 100 years, and we want to make sure that Angry Birds is a permanent part of pop culture. And I mean, we've only been doing this now for a bit over 4 years. So if you look at the other like character-based businesses, Hello Kitty is turning 40 this year. Of course, Mickey Mouse came out in like 1928, so like ages ago. So we're kind of like we're just a baby.
So it's a date back here in 96 years then. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll see you then.
All right.